Let's talk about that September jobs report, shall we? So the September
Yes.
jobs report came out last week. We had a series of jobs reports all through the week, and they were kind of a mixed bag. So we had the ADP payroll number, which wasn't so bad on Wednesday. Then we had the Labor Department number on Thursday, and then we had the main payroll jobs number on Friday. This was the one that everyone was looking at because this is the sign that either we need to pull, that the Federal Reserve is going to pull back on stimulus,
Right.
maybe buying up additional bonds, throwing money at Wall Street. How is the overall employment and labor market looking? Are people going back to work? And this was really the first sort of litmus test for these unemployment benefits.
Yes,
Right?
exactly. Especially because September is back to school. A lot of times there's a lot of new hires for the school, for government and state jobs, local jobs, school unified districts. And so the forecasts had 500,000 jobs would be added in September. And we all sort of crossed our fingers and said, okay, that's going to be the number. And it was barely half of that. It was about 194,000 jobs as opposed to 500,000. So why did economists and forecasters have such egg on their face? Unfortunately, the group of employees that did not go back to work were largely women. And you can see that in, for instance, there was 166,000 state and local government jobs that were gone, lost, right? Is this because women need to stay home and be caregivers for their children? Is this because school districts are an inhospitable place right now because we're so busy arguing about masks and vaccines and all of that? And some women said, I'm not going to have this. I don't need parents coming and knocking at the door about whether or not their kids should
Right.
wear masks. Why? What is this? Well, I'm sure there's a few reasons. But again, it's mostly women that are not entering the labor force.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting look at why we've been thinking about the broader economic issue, the broader employment issue, but we haven't really been looking at some of the main underlying fundamental problems, which is childcare. Like our childcare system in the United States is a disaster.
Yes.
One of the reasons why Bernie Sanders has been so adamant about early childcare, that's one of the things that, hey, to his credit, President Biden has been talking about extensively, which is child care, making sure that pre-K, as part of the stimulus, making sure that there's a place for, like if a mom wants to be able to go to work, well, who's going to watch the child?
Right. And daycare centers are not able to hire, right?
Right.
And so if there's nobody to watch the child other than the mom, that usually ends up falling on the mother because the numbers still bear out that there's a gender wage gap.
Right.
And so if we're going to choose between the two of us who watches the kids and who goes to work, we're going to choose the higher paying job. And unfortunately, that remains men. That remains the man in the family.
Well, also, this whole argument, I think, also interesting. There's a couple of different sort of subtext to this whole thing. To me, it's the biggest issue is that the majority of people who just said, I'm out of the labor force are women.
Yes.
And the second big piece of this is that it wasn't unemployment benefits that kept people from working. So we've been talking about this all summer. I know maybe people are sick and tired of me hearing about it, but the argument that, and you hear this you see this on Facebook, you see people sharing this, it's because those unemployment benefits, keeping these lazy people, you're just lazy. They're keeping you home, keeping you out of the office. And as David Sirota tweeted this morning, he says, it's almost as if the jobless benefits deter people from working talking point was a complete lie manufactured by business lobbyists and happily promoted by corporate media, and now workers suffer because the benefits were cut. So many of these states cut benefits as early as May.
Yes.
And the data, even in the Wall Street Journal, points out that had little to no impact on people going back to work. And this is from the Wall Street Journal, conservative newspaper.
Yes, but certain states like Texas did see people go back to work when they cut the unemployment benefits.
But a little bit, just a little bit.
But
a little tiny bit.
Okay, but
it wasn't like the overwhelming factor, though.
But we're talking about any progress forward versus any progress back.
Okay, but...
And many states, I'm not sure I buy that yet, because many states had their own stimulus that they kept going. California continues to pay stimulus from their federal budget
Yeah, and they have a surplus, by the way.
Right?
So,
They do.
And California has been actually doing much, much better in the past few months than other
I
states.
don't know what the labor market looks like just for California, but given that all across the board jobs are down and many states, the big one, the most populous one being California, continue to pay stimulus, I'm not sure we can make that leap. That extra unemployment does not actually keep people from the workforce. That's absolutely not the experience of my mother-in-law, his mom, right? Who she can't hire people because her employees are actually telling her, I make more going home and being on unemployment. And so they choose not to work. She wanted to consider a vaccine mandate because what my mother-in-law does is she, how do you describe it? She runs a nonprofit agency that takes people with disabilities in her community, and they do jobs around the community, mostly landscaping. And so the people that come and work for her have, say, Down syndrome or heart disease or some kind of not just heart disease, but developmental medical problems. And so to protect those people, she wanted to ask her employees that are not disabled to have vaccines, but she's like, I will lose them. They'll all just decide to go not take the vaccine and collect an unemployment. So people actually do this. They do sometimes say, I'm not going to do the work that the job that I had before that was a good job. And
well,
instead,
okay, maybe not. And I'm just throwing this out there. I think what we're seeing is maybe a lot of these jobs haven't been good, right? And let's be honest, we've seen this certainly in the retail sector.
what job is good if you're not your own boss, though? Like we run on a labor economy, and not everyone can
A lot
just
of people
say,
like their jobs.
I don't like.
A lot of people love their
I just don't like
jobs.
the idea of working, so I'm just not going to do
Well,
it
here's an
anymore.
example. I mean, we've been talking about the striking workers, right? We've
Yes.
seen the Frito-Lay fat. We've seen Kellogg's. We've seen these people who are being forced. They like their job, right? They took the job. They like their job. They just don't want to have to work 80 hours a week and also not have a day off until 2022. So
Well,
they
and
might.
use Dan Price as an example. You know, like those
Right.
people might not have liked their job when they were making the wages that they did, but once he paid them all $70,000 a year as a base salary, they're happy. He has no people leaving. They get their benefits and all that other stuff. So I think it's that we found out that people they need to make more in order to survive. And if they don't, why would they want to go back?
Right. And so if we're making the point that it's a simple matter of scales, where do I make more? And do I make more for going to a job that's soul sucking, or even for a job that maybe I do like, but I can make more by staying home with stimulus money, right? Then of course people do make those trade-offs. Of course they do. We're seeing
Some.
right. And so I don't think we can say across the board that stimulus money does not keep people out of the workforce.
But you also can't
it's
say
a double negative, but you know what I mean.
But you also can't say across the board that because people got unemployment benefits, they just were like, I'm staying home. You know, there's so many other factors. And as a point of different
Yes.
retailers, I was diving into some of the research from these different retailers this morning. And one of them saying, he's like, look, I run a retail establishment. And when people come in and they throw, well, yeah, you got to get rid of those unemployment benefits. That's why you can't hire anybody. He's like, I always push back on that. I'm the owner of the store. He's like, because there's so many other factors. Childcare in this country is awful. Also, people are concerned about being on frontline workers during a pandemic. There's other factors. It's not just, of course, that they're just getting an additional $500, $600 a week or $300 a week.
Perhaps I was listening to Tom Reelwright this morning. He's our tax accountant, and he does the
He's brilliant.
Wealthability
Yeah.
podcast. And he was saying, my wife and I noticed that when we go out to dinner, the food is coming before the drinks. Why is this? Because there's no bartenders. There's short bar staff, right? Are bartenders staying home because they don't have childcare, or are they what is the reason for these? I don't think that we can say across the board. And sure, plenty of moms are bartenders. Fine. Plenty of dads are bartenders. But I don't think we can make a generalization that the stimulus money does or does not disincentivize work. I don't feel comfortable with that causality link.
No, I get it. But I also think that there's a lot of people who, for instance, chefs. We saw this story a few weeks ago where chefs are saying, wait a minute, instead of me working in this restaurant and killing myself, I can actually make more money by working as a private chef for a rich person on a yacht or whatever. So
Yeah.
these chefs who are sought after chefs, they're like, I just don't want to work in a restaurant anymore. It's killing. It's brutal. So I'm just going to go and work for this family that hires me on their yacht. and that's what they're doing.
You cannot
remember
begrudge that choice. I would
Remember
like to
that
know
report-
in the comments if you are having this experience. Is your food coming before the drinks? What about you, David? Is that happening to you?
No, I don't go out anywhere much anymore.
Oh, okay.
But what I was going to say
You're
also is that like a lot, we did a report not too long ago, Clayton, where we showed how many people were starting their own businesses with their stimulus money and that unemployment money, you know. So a lot of people invested and became entrepreneurs during that time. Like you were saying, Natalie, because you don't have control of your life until you are, you know, doing your own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, taking a little bit of money and saying, "Hey, I don't have the anxiety that I had before about actually being, food insecure. I can actually, spend some time and think about what I want to do with my life instead of, being worried about where that next paycheck is going to come from." And
I
putting
just
food on the
don't
and
think we can say that there is across the board motivation or disincentive because it's so tricky right now. And especially like we see these numbers in the schools, right? And in the schools, people don't want to go and work for the school district anymore. It used to be like a pretty safe job to be the attendance lady at a school, right? And now we see all over TikTok is like angry mobs of pitchfork carrying parents are coming in and saying, my kids shouldn't have to wear masks, and like attacking the administrators. Who would do that, right?
People are crazy. People are crazy. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. You can also become a channel member by going to morninginvest.com/join, where you can stick it to the mainstream media and support independent journalism. We're able to bring you the stories that you won't see on any of the major billionaire-backed networks. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time, everyone.